Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we are diving into some really fascinating and maybe a little controversial material that asks a pretty huge question. What is it psychologically that creates that deep, compelling, can't get you out of my head kind of attraction? This goes way beyond just pickup lines or what you put on your dating profile. We're going to explore the hidden engines of desire.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Most of what we're told about attraction is all about showing off, right? Being the most successful, the funniest, the most impressive person in the room, or just crossing your fingers and hoping for some kind of lucky spark. But what if all of that is actually just a distraction? The source material we're digging into today says the real way to forge a profound connection is quieter, it's way more psychological, and it all comes down to understanding what someone secretly, even unconsciously, is craving.
And right here, this is the first big mental flip. The myth is that you got to list off your accomplishments, talk about your job, your successes, the whole resume. But the truth, according to this way of thinking, is that real attraction isn't about you at all. It's about them. It's about making the other person feel seen and heard and just absolutely brilliant. Because when they walk away from a conversation with you feeling smarter, funnier, and more interesting, they connect all those amazing feelings directly back to you. Okay, so of course, honesty is important in any relationship. Nobody's arguing with that. But the myth here is that just bluntly stating your opinions or your needs is the best way to connect. The source we're looking at says what's way more powerful is building an emotional bridge first. And you do that through what psychologists call active listening. Giving someone your complete, undivided attention, reflecting back their feelings, and showing you actually get it. It shows that the conversation is more about understanding them than it is about you stating your case. And that creates a bond that just facts alone never could. And this right here, brings us to the absolute core idea of today's explainer. You know that idea that attraction is some kind of magic, an uncontrollable force, fate, or destiny, or lightning in a bottle. It's a nice idea, but it might not be the whole story. The truth, as this source material claims, is that attraction is a deeply psychological process. It's driven by these unconscious needs and hidden desires that once you understand them, can actually be influenced. Now, this isn't about manipulation. It's about learning to see the parts of a person that maybe even they don't see in themselves. So how does this all actually work? Here's our roadmap. First, we're going to dig a little deeper into those myths about attraction. Then, we'll get into the core psychology of desire. After that, we'll learn from some, unlikely teachers, therapists, and even con artists. Then we'll get super practical with the art of observation. And finally, we'll tie it all together with this idea of becoming someone's missing piece. All right, so let's start with why those typical strategies, the bragging, the boasting, why they so often just fall completely flat. I mean, we're all taught to put our best foot forward, but that gets twisted into just talking about ourselves. And the problem is, if everyone in the room is just talking about themselves, is anyone really listening? Is anyone connecting? It just becomes a contest, not a real conversation. And the source suggests that the person who's always trying to prove how great they are doesn't come off as impressive. They just seem arrogant. And, this is not some brand new revolutionary idea. This quote from the 17th century French writer Jean de La Bruyère just nails it, and it's hundreds of years old. He figured out that the person who leaves a conversation feeling really good about themselves also feels really good about you. Just think about that for a second. If you can make someone else feel witty and insightful and admired, they're going to link that incredible feeling of self-worth with being around you. You literally become the source of their good feelings, and that is an unbelievably magnetic quality to have. And this is where a really powerful psychological loop kicks in. See, most of us walk through our days completely wrapped up in our own heads, our own worries, our work, our stress. Our internal voice is pretty much always, even if we don't realize it, asking what's in it for me. So the person who shatters that pattern, the one who generously gives attention and praise and validation, they become like an oasis in a desert. They become a source of emotional relief. And listen, this isn't about throwing out cheap compliments. It's about genuinely noticing and pointing out someone's strengths, their ideas, their unique spark. You essentially make them the hero of the story. And in their mind, that makes you unforgettable. So, focusing on the other person is clearly a powerful move. But why? Why does it work so incredibly well? To really get that, we need to dive into some pretty deep psychological theories, the stuff that's running the show in our unconscious minds. And the source points us directly to the work of one of psychology's giants. The brilliant Carl Jung gave us this incredible insight. He said that what we often chalk up to fate or chemistry, that's really just our own unconscious mind pulling the strings. You know that feeling, that inexplicable pull you feel towards someone, that sense of destiny, like you were meant to meet?
Well, Jung would say you're actually responding to something that's hidden deep, deep inside yourself. And this is the key that unlocks the whole argument of our source material.
And here's the specific mechanism Jung talked about, the anima and the animus. So for a man, the anima is this unconscious, idealized image of a woman that he carries inside him. It's shaped mostly by his mother, but also by other women and cultural ideas. For a woman, the animus is the same thing, but it's her inner image of a man, shaped by her father and male figures. The easiest way to think about it is like a hidden blueprint. It's this mix of qualities, some good, some bad, that forms our secret, unconscious ideal of a partner. It's the standard we're subconsciously measuring people against without even knowing it.
Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. According to this Jungian view, that spark of attraction happens when a real person in front of you happens to embody the qualities of your hidden anima or animus. So let's say a woman's animus, her hidden ideal, values someone who's both protective but also has a playful artistic side. When she meets a man who in conversation shows both a quiet strength and a creative sense of humor, well, it's like a key turning a lock she didn't even know she had. She feels this intense, almost magical pull, not because she made a checklist, but because he just activated a deep, unconscious part of her. She feels understood and completed in a way that's almost impossible to put into words.
Okay, so this idea of a hidden blueprint is pretty wild, but it gets really powerful when you think about the world we're all living in right now. The source argues that our modern world, with all its loneliness, basically creates the perfect environment for these psychological dynamics to play out. And we can actually see how this works by looking at some pretty unlikely examples.
Let's just start with this number and let it sink in. 1 in 6 adults will go through a major depressive episode. That's huge. And what that really tells us is that just beneath the surface of our super-connected, always-on lives, there is this massive, unspoken epidemic of loneliness and anxiety. People are starving for real connection, and this creates a kind of emotional vacuum. So, the person who knows how to fill that vacuum with real empathy and understanding, they don't just become attractive, they become almost magnetic.
Now, to see how this stuff works in the real world, the source gives us two figures who seem like total opposites, the therapist and the con man. But here's the thing, they are both masters of understanding human needs. You've got the therapist, whose entire job is built on creating a safe space through empathy, listening, and not judging. They build trust so a person can open up and heal. And then you have the con man. He also understands human desire, but he exploits it. He looks for our deep craving for an easy fix, an easy win, whether it's money or an emotional shortcut. Let's look at this insight from the con man's perspective for a second. Joseph Yellow Kid Weil, who was this legendary swindler, basically said that people's desire to get something for nothing is an incredibly powerful force. Now, he used that to get their money, but the source applies this same idea to our emotions. When life is tough, we all secretly wish for an easy emotional reward. We want someone to give us comfort, or validation, or a moment of joy without us having to ask or work for it. So the person who generously provides that, who listens without demanding, who comforts without judging, is offering an emotional something for nothing. They become a source of easy pleasure and relief, and that pull can be absolutely immense. The ethical line, of course, is all about your intent. Are you doing it with genuine care, or for your own gain?
So, if we buy this idea that people have all these hidden needs and unconscious desires, well, how on earth are you supposed to figure out what they are? It's not like you can just ask, hey, so, tell me about your animus. The answer, according to this framework, is that it all comes down to becoming a master of observation.
And this is exactly why observation is so critical. Because as the experts tell us, the vast majority of our communication isn't in the words we say. 65%! That's huge! The words are just the tip of the iceberg. The real story, the real truth is told in the tone of voice, the way someone holds themselves, that little flicker of an eye, the pause before they answer. If you really want to understand someone's hidden desires, you have to learn to listen to the music, not just the lyrics. What isn't being said is often the most important message of all.
So, okay, here's a practical breakdown from the source on how you actually start to tune into these signals. First, pay really close attention to those little offhand comments and jokes. When someone says, "Oh, I wish I was more spontaneous," or jokes about being a total bookworm, they are often revealing a real unmet part of themselves. Second, watch their physical tells. What topic makes their eyes light up? What makes them blush, even just a little? That's a direct line into their emotional world. Third, body language. Are they leaning in when you talk about travel and dreams? Do their arms cross when a certain subject comes up? Fourth, Notice how they act differently in different settings. Are they quiet and reserved in a big group, but super open and animated when it's just you? That could signal a deep need for that one-on-one intimacy. And finally, listen for those little hints about the future. When they say, someday we should go there, or I've always wanted to try that, they are literally handing you a map to their desires. And fulfilling even a tiny one shows you're listening on a level that almost nobody else is.
All right, let's pull all of this together now. We've talked about getting past the myths, we've looked at the unconscious psychology with Jung, and we've talked about how to observe these hidden cues. The final piece of the puzzle, according to the source material, is to actively become the person who can fulfill those unmet needs. This is the real art of becoming the missing piece in their life.
When you really get down to it, this whole idea of igniting obsession boils down to these core principles right here. It's about a radical, fundamental shift in focus, away from yourself and onto the other person. It's about listening with real, genuine empathy to build a connection that goes beyond surface-level chat. It's about paying attention to those little clues that reveal their unconscious anima or animus, what they secretly value. It's about generously offering those emotional rewards they're craving, comfort, validation, joy, without asking for anything back. At the end of the day, it's about becoming the one person in their life who truly, truly sees and hears them. And according to the source, what we might call obsession is really just a state of deep emotional dependency that's built on a foundation of genuine attention and the incredible feeling of being profoundly understood.
And that leaves us with the final and I think most provocative thought from this material. When you consciously learn to understand and fulfill someone's deepest psychological needs, what are you actually doing? Are you creating the perfect conditions for a deep, authentic, beautiful connection? Or are you just becoming a master of psychological influence, a benevolent manipulator? Think about it. The techniques, the empathy, the listening, fulfilling needs, they're the exact same tools used by both the therapist trying to heal and the con artist trying to exploit. The only difference is the intent behind them. So the question we're left with is this a framework for building incredible relationships, or is it a playbook for emotional power? And that is something to think about.